morning, everyone. It's Thursday, sorry about that. It's Thursday, which means it is time for Tap Talk. And I am joined today by someone who I think fits the definition of a little appreciated art form artist, and it's poet Emily Vieweg. So let's bring her on rather than me talk about her. Good morning, Emily.
Good morning. Oh my gosh. Thank you. That's
Well, I
so
think that's
nice.
really true. I think poetry is the kind of thing that is assigned in seventh grade English, and then maybe you have a poetry unit somewhere in high school, maybe in college. But most people I discovered when I was teaching English had their sort of worst experience in a poetry unit because the teacher would say, um, what do you think this poem means? And someone
Oh
would raise
gosh.
their hand, and then the teacher would say, no, it doesn't mean that. And they would feel stupid. And so they would dismiss poetry outright because they think they know poetry because they've got, because I could not stop for death, it kindly stopped for me, kind of Emily Dickinson stuff in their head. And I'm
Right.
not missing Emily Dickinson because she's pretty spectacular, but
hmm
she can be tricky along with many of the so-called great poets.
Yep.
So let's talk about Emily. Why in the heck are you a poet?
I've been writing since I was a young child. I mean, my first creative story that I wrote, I was 9.
Right?
And it was The Truth About Santa Claus.
Oh,
And it's buried somewhere in my parents' basement in an old notebook
yep.
somewhere. But it was this 4-page story, and I was just more angry. So I just wrote this thing out. Um, ever since, I've been in awe of language. I mean, I think Dr. Seuss opened my eyes when I was little, with the Sneetches and creating words out of 26 letters of the alphabet. You can create what is a wocket. I've never heard of that. So
Mhm.
creating the language was just fascinating to me. And my parents are both lovers of the arts and of language and words and um, musicals and theater and all things artsy fartsy. So it
Mhm.
just kind of in the blood a little bit.
Mhm.
And then I wrote some really awful poetry in high school. Oh, it was terrible, but I thought it was amazing. Of
As
course,
you
because
should.
it is.
As you
um
should.
yeah, and then I went to college, and my first poetry instructor said, "This is just terrible, it's awful, I don't know why you're writing anything." And I quit writing for like 10 years.
Mhm.
But then I took a workshop, and it was the gates had been opened. So it's just, I mean, I've been writing my entire life, and I love it. And I discovered that it doesn't have to be this flowery, hoity toity, point your nose up at the world
Absolute
type of thing,
thing.
which, I mean, granted, there is a place for that. I mean,
Yep.
there's a place for like high society type of language and art and such. And I found just everyday life has such beauty and awe, watching like ants crawl on the table, and just kind of sitting there and then moving again and then carrying their dead brother off of the notebook. I mean, it's just like, hello, metaphor for life. I mean, and it was just it's just finding those little moments is just. And then so the moments themselves are alive, and how can I, as a wordsmith, I call myself a wordsmith,
As you should.
share that in a way that is not is beautiful but not pretentious. I mean,
Yeah.
it's nature, it's natural, it's lovely, it's scary, there's so many emotions. And how can I present that to the world in a way that other people understand? It's like, oh, I get it, oh my gosh, that's so amazing, and it's so simple. And so that's how
Yeah.
I view my work. And I like finding the small moments and finding the beauty in those just little moments. So that's why I write. It's just because I have to.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So, um, first of all, I want to talk about your um award-winning publication, But the Flames. Tell us what this won, Emily.
Well, oh gosh, let me think. The one of the poems in there, Bipolar is one honorable mention to an international poetry competition. Another piece in there won third prize. Another piece in there won most or best performance piece. I mean, there are so many individual pieces in there that have won some sort of accolade, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I wrote that. I can't
Yeah.
even believe it. So yeah, that's it's just so exciting to be able to share that.
Well, and this was published. I'm not dismissing anybody who self-publishes, but this is not a
Yeah.
self-published book of poetry. This is from no, I'm sorry, Finishing Line Press, which is
Yep.
a super legit publishing house.
It is. It's a very well known publishing small independent publisher. They do lots of books every single year, and it was, I think, I submitted the manuscript to like three different places right away, and Finishing Line was one of them. My mentor actually said, "You should consider submitting there," and I'm like, they're not gonna accept it. They're too well known. Who's gonna?" And then, like a month and a half later, I got the yes, we want to publish this, and what? I
Yeah,
think
I
that was
remember
actually
getting that email update from you. Yeah.
that was
Yeah,
the
kind of
that
a
was the sound I
confusing.
made when I was, out
Yep.
there, screaming and running around my apartment. Uh, just like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's so
Well,
exciting
because
just to think
it
about. Oh my gosh, it's out there.
yeah, and it's out there because someone else saw it and found value in it. And again, that is not to dismiss self-publication, because there is a place for that. And what an amazing time that we live in, that you can create content and produce it for the world, for yourself. So that's amazing. But this is a big, big deal. And
Yeah,
you're,
I'm.
just from Little Fargo, North Dakota. So um, when you said you think of yourself as a wordsmith, it sent me down a path of, all right, what other smiths are there? So you've got blacksmiths and those kinds of things. And why I think wordsmith is such a resonant word for you is that one arm of your poetry that you do, which is very immediate and very in the present moment, is you write poetry basically on demand. You're like
Yes.
an itinerant, here's my typewriter. What, tell me 6 words, or you ask this very small series of questions, and then clickety clack, you just type out this poem. So I want to read for the audience the poem you wrote about me. And all I remember you asking, and maybe you will know if you asked me other things. You asked me about a time of year, a color, and an emotion, I think. Does that seem right?
Something like it's like your month of birth, your favorite color, your favorite season, things like that. Favorite time of year, just some general favorite things. Animal you most identify with, that some of
Mhm.
those things.
Yep.
That's sort of the key to trying to figure out the best connection to a
Yeah.
person and create that poem. Yeah.
So I just want people to see it up close before I read it. It's just on a typewriter, a little clickety clackety, this little piece of paper, which is artistic in and of itself because it's got one rough edge. It's a kind of gray yellow color. So you're not just getting like, oh, here I had this scrap paper. So here it is. Dana, when the sun springs forth in the early morning, I am reminded of how blooms from the garden must work to find their light. Pushing, pressing, emotions must be comfortably controlled only to the point of reaching a moment of peace. But then the work begins, doesn't it? Finding the light is only the beginning. After that, we must try to see through squinted eyes, hoping our hearts agree with what we find as truth. So I think I told you I liked apricot, early mornings, and spring. That's what I remember telling you.
Yep.
You wrote this in, I don't know, I'll be generous, 4 minutes.
About that.
Four
Yep.
minutes. I burst right into tears.
Yes, you did.
You wrote this for me on March 13th, 2021. It's as resonant with me today as it was the day that you wrote it for me, because somehow, Emily Vieweg, you you have like an old coily phone cord connecting your spirit to the people who you write these poems for, because I'm not the only person who's heard this poem written about them and gone, wait, what?
How do
So
you know this about me? What, how do we know each other very well? Have you
how
seen me
do
somewhere?
you do this, Emily? What
It's
happens for you in this moment? And I'm not expecting you to, didactically explain it, but how do you do this? How do you even have the audacity to do it? More to the point.
well, it's kind of, I mean, it's kind of a weird gift. I
I think get rid of
am
the word weird. It's a gift.
It's a gift.
And
And
what kind of a
I
gift?
just I,
Don't
I
be my
there's
question, Emily. It's a gift.
it's a gift. And there's a fascinating, when I'm with another person across the desk from another person, and I shake their hand and we have a moment, we have this exchange of energy, and it really does have to be mutual. I mean, if somebody's like, I'm not going to share anything with you, and it's like, well, that's information also.
Yeah.
So there is an energy exchange, and it's just, I if you remember, I shook your hand and then I did this,
Mhm.
and I was just kind of thinking, okay, what energy am I getting? What do I know already about Dana? Which, not a lot. I mean,
No, no.
we're not super close
We have no personal
friends.
connection. We
Right.
only
We
are
don't have
connected
much.
professionally.
Right. We don't have a very personal connection,
No.
but I know enough about you to say, okay, what is important? Um, but then it's also more than that. It's deeper than that. And that's something that I really can't explain. I mean,
Yeah.
it really is this exchange of energy. And I kind of let your energy into mine a little bit, maybe share mine with you a little bit. And then there's this conversation between the energies, and then it's just like, okay, and then, I'm in a zone when I'm typing. I'm just like,
Yep.
type, 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 type. And then I'll wait a second and I'll be like, wait a minute, there's a word that doesn't quite fit. Where is it? Maybe I'll do this again.
Mhm.
I was like, okay, okay. And then I keep going, and then I'm done, and it's like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it is a fascinating experience. And afterwards, after you do 3 or 4 in a row, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
But it's so satisfying, because it's like, wow, I had this energy exchange with these people, and hopefully I created something that resonated with them. And if they don't, and if it doesn't, that's okay too, because that was what the energy was doing. So it's this fascinating, like, metaphysical energy exchange situation going on. And I felt that exchange between individuals ever since I was young. I could walk into a room and be like, okay, this is okay, I'm welcome here. And just by
Mm.
walking into a room, and
Yep.
not by looking around and seeing if I know people, just the energy is like, okay, this is angry energy. I don't want to spend too much time in here.
Yep.
Or, ooh, this is interesting. This is kind of a funky fast. And it's just because I mean, there doesn't have to be music. There it's just the energy of the people in the
Yeah.
room. And it really is, I mean, and you don't really understand it until you notice. It's like, oh, that's what that is.
Yeah.
You walk into a space and you're like, something's off, or something's interesting, or you kind of feel, some people can really feel that, and I am one of them.
Yeah.
um but also I tend to attract, I'm also a helper, so my
Mhm.
energy attracts people that kind of might need something. I don't know what it is,
Yep.
like, in my brain, it's like, oh, I know what this person needs. Not at all.
Yeah.
This is very much of a subconscious energy type of situation, and it's fascinating and wonderful and scary, and I've made people cry, and I don't mean to.
Yep.
No, but it's a, oh my gosh, you told me something I needed to hear.
Yeah.
And, or, wow, I needed to know this. How did you know this about me? And this is so true. I had a a self-proclaimed skeptic. He's like, yeah, no, you're not going to be able to read me at all. And I was like, well, that's fine if I can't.
Right?
I don't do this for, but I wrote just hand wrote this poem in, at a karaoke night. And he was, the eyes went open and he like stepped back away from me. I think he thought I was a witch or
Yeah.
something, you know?
Well, you might
Um,
be.
but it was fascinating. And he was like, wow, how did you know that about me? And I was like, dude, I don't know. Your
Yeah.
energy told me this is what you needed to hear. So I
So
guess.
we have about 45 seconds left. Tell me what's next. What are you working on?
One of my a poem I wrote in about a day and a half was accepted into a horror anthology. So that's fascinating. I'm going to be using that into pushing that into a chapbook called Click Here to Define. And so
Mhm.
it's basically looking at definitions, and then it's a found poem slash interpretive thing. So it's really way early in stages. I have a piece coming out in North Dakota Quarterly, the next edition of North Dakota Quarterly. So that's awesome because it's like, wow, it's home. Um, so a couple of brand new things that are happening right now, that I get to work in my new office, in my new house. So that'll be fun too. Kind of feel what the energy is like there. So
So I just want to say to anybody watching this, if you are one of those people who says, well, poetry was fine in the 19th century, poetry is dead. Nobody's writing poetry today. You just spent 16 minutes and 40 seconds with somebody writing poetry very presently today. And if you were on to hear me read the piece she wrote for me, it's totally comprehensible. It's metaphorical. It's elegant. It's simple. It's deep. It's present, it's longing, it's universal, it's individual. I mean, that is what poetry can be and is. And Emily is a perfect embodiment of it. So if you've decided that poetry is not for you, find Emily Vieweg and let her make you a poem that is for you because it is about you. And then come back and tell me that poetry is not for you. Emily, thanks for joining us. I just celebrate all of your success because it is a hard medium and it demands so much. If you've ever tried to write a poem and a novel about love, 800 pages is way easier than 80 lines. Let me promise you, 8 lines is excruciating. So, bravo on your success and on your perseverance. And thanks for joining me today.
thanks so much for having me. I love it.
It was fun to talk, Emily, fun to revisit my poem. As always, thanks to 702 Communications for the support of Tap Talk. We'll see you next week. Everybody, take care.